Hello, everyone, and it's a pleasure to be hosting this webinar today. My name is Ritu Mehrotra, and I'm the host for this webinar. And I'm the founder and CEO of United We Care. United We Care is a mental health platform, and we started this almost 4 years back. Today's topic is mental wellness in modern workplace. And with me, there are two distinguished panelists. I would like to welcome Dr. Samir Parikh. Dr. Samir Parikh is a renowned psychiatrist, speaker, author, and mentor with 25 plus years of experience. As a chairman of Department of Mental Health and Behavioral Sciences as Fortis Mental Health Care, he leads the Fortis National Mental Health Program, playing a pivotal role in advancing mental health awareness and reducing stigma across India. He is widely recognized as a leading authority on mental health issues. And apart from everything else, he is a big foodie as well. Welcome, Dr. Parikh.
Thank you. Thank you.
We also have Mai Tlau. Mai is a distinguished expert in employee well-being and health benefits. She's leading wellness initiatives at Prudent Insurance Brokers. With over a decade of experience, she has spearheaded innovative wellness projects for over 100 plus large corporates in India, managing a team of diverse wellness professionals. A frequent panelist at prestigious forums like FICCI Women, Arogya World Foundation, and Pfizer, Mai is also a fitness enthusiast, an accomplished full marathon runner. Wow, Mai. Her leadership extends to driving impactful wellness initiatives within her organization and across industries. Mai, welcome.
Thank you for the warm welcome, Ritu.
Perfect. So we'll actually dive right into this because we have about 45 minutes for this webinar. And then we've kept kind of 15 minutes at the end for all questions. Dr. Parikh, I'm going to come to you actually for the first one. So if you look at the current statistics, right? So according to Deloitte Mental Health Survey, which was done in 2020, over 80% of Indian workforce faces mental health challenges, right? And workforce related stress is identified as the primary factor that's impacting health by 47% of the respondents of this survey. And you've been working a lot around social stigma as well, Dr. Parikh, which discourages about 40 to 50% of people seeking help or managing their symptoms effectively. I really want to understand from you that from a clinical standpoint, what are the most common mental health challenges faced by employees in modern workplaces? And how can early intervention make a difference? Dr. Parikh? Did we lose him?
Fine. The screen kind of.
Yeah, now we can hear you, Dr. Parikh. Did you hear the question?
Yeah.
Okay.
Yes, I did. I think two aspects, Ritu, two aspects mental. And if you were to look at mental health disorders, this is about 10 to 15% of the working population at a given moment in time. This is a global concern, not merely something that's in India. And 3 in 4, which is 75% people, do not seek help. Now, the question is, why don't they seek help? First, the fear of being discriminated against. You'll think if I have a problem, if I have a disorder, you may think that I'm not good enough. It may affect my appraisal. It may affect the roles you give me. It may affect the way you are treating me. That's the thought process I may have. Second is, let's say I know what I have or whom, but where do I go to? So not having access is the second aspect. And then obviously, how do I fit in the affordability aspect as well? All of that. Now you put this as one level. Next level, add the reality that there is approximately 300% shortage of experts in most countries. So when you have that shortage, when you have an increased awareness that's happening, if you don't take care of access, which is where I believe organizational role comes, that if organizations create awareness, so stigma comes down. Organizations create affirmative acceptance, so discrimination perception goes down. Organizations create access that, okay, this is a reliable, and organizations support to take care of the affordability. You put this together, and that's probably a step forward when it comes to workplace mental health.
Maya, I'll extend this to you actually, since you've been, at the forefront of this. How do you see this, right? And Dr. Parikh, of course, is saying, it's a good idea for these four to come together. When it comes into practice, what is it that you have seen with dealing with the large corporates?
Right. So, post-pandemic, we have seen a lot of changes, not just in mental health, but in overall health and well-being in terms of their policies, in terms of the perspective shift. It's no longer the same as how corporates and employees themselves used to look, pre-pandemic. That in itself is a positive change. We see that leaders are talking more about it. They are coming out and talking about their own personal journey. We are looking at practices where mental health leaves are given, where senior leaders are talking about their own journey. So from an industry point of view, that shift has emerged for sure, and it's still a long way to go, but I think having these collaborations from mental health providers, insurance providers, and the employers or organizations have helped us catalyze the whole effort. So that in itself, I think it's one of the positive changes that we are noticing in the industry.
Thanks, Mai. And you spoke about COVID-19 and how that kind of had an impact. So we all know that this COVID-19 had the exacerbated mental health issues, especially for employees, right? A lot of people were working from home, then coming back to work, and a lot of employees also started to report, over about 50%, and there are multiple data points that actually talk about it. And Dr. Parikh already said that over 70% people don't even kind of report these, right? And then there are people who are kind of talking about expressing uncertain future, with what's going on. So with your extensive experience, Mai, especially in corporate health and employee well-being, what trends have you observed in how organizations have been prioritizing mental health, especially post-pandemic?
Right. So again, like I said, organizations, HR, and when I say organizations, it's a total rewards team, the HR team members, people who are responsible to design these programs have been really forthcoming and telling us the various kinds of programs that they require, right? And we have seen de-addiction campaigns, suicide prevention, gatekeeping trainings, various other types of topics that used to, we used to mostly talk about burnout, stress. In fact, those are no longer, those are very general now. People are really digging deeper and saying that, okay, I need to have a targeted approach. And creating cohorts within my organization and ensuring that I'm able to really give them what they require, right? So a traditional EAP in most organizations are no longer sufficient. They are adding supplemental programs, right? It could be an AI chatbot. It could be a mindfulness app. Habit formation challenge is another big one. In fact, there was another client that we were working with where they had everything, but they felt that people in their organization grief as per the survey, they needed grief counseling. So we plugged in grief counseling as a, additional supplemental benefit. So they are really, looking at making it very, very wholesome and not just keeping it as a good to have. But I think mental health programs are now the topmost recommended programs in the overall wellness, benefits portfolio.
Wow. That's very encouraging to know, Mai. If you look at one of the things that Dr. Parikh you spoke about right early on is how do you pick the signs, right? And because most people will not talk about it, and I would like to understand from you actually, since you have been dealing with so many patients, and of course, when it comes to even corporate mental health, Fortis has been at the forefront, and Adayu has been at the forefront to be able to look at these challenges, right? So, what key psychological or behavioral signs should managers and let's say HR teams should monitor to identify and address burnout and mental health struggles in employees, because there is still so much stigma that's attached to it, right? So would love to have your thoughts around that. Dr. Parikh?
Recognize it. Yeah, can you hear me?
Now we can hear you, Dr. Parikh. So we lost you for first 10
I,
seconds.
okay, no problems. What I'm saying is, you need to look at it not from the point of view of whether an HR or a manager is able to recognize. I don't think that alone is good enough, because our day-to-day interactions happen with a different set of people with a different frequency. The other aspect is we ourselves will be able to identify for a lot of problems as well. So now, keeping burnout aside, I'll first talk about identifying. Look at some very basic things. Thought, let's say my thoughts change. I'm starting to think more negative. I'm having some fearful thoughts. Moods, I'm having mood swings, irritability, anger, low mood. My behavior, I have become withdrawn. I have become irritable behavioral pattern. Social, I am not interacting with people I used to as much, or I'm changing my social network or being more withdrawn. At my work level, I'm making careless errors, absenteeism. If I were a school student or a college student, my grades are being affected. I'm not doing it the way I was earlier doing. It affects my physiology, which is sleep, appetite, etc. Now, if any of these categories, two, three of them, consistently, let's say for a period of 2 weeks or so, maybe more, if I am feeling there is presence of distress, which is causing impairment in my functionality, which means my level of functioning was this, it has now become this because of these symptoms. If that's the case, I must get myself evaluated, whether it is a general physician, whether it's a mental health professional, whether it's an AI screening, whichever way I want, I need to take that step. Similarly, if I or my well-wishers notice this in some of us, we should also help them identify this. That's as far as understanding mental illnesses or signs and symptoms or are there. When it comes to burnout, it will happen in a slightly different, more chronic way, where you'll start seeing the level of engagement and motivation being affected, some reactions being affected, and the kind of involvement that was there in this individual, that's kind of getting eroded a little bit, largely because of the nature of work, the interpersonal engagement, pressures, and the kind of support systems that individuals have. So that's slightly a different one. And in fact, what I was saying was is quite important, that what conventional EAPs were doing was catering to a very small percentage of people who could have been benefited or who are benefited by some of the self-help related work, which could be exercise, yoga, meditation, guidance, journaling, um, relaxation, meditation, some of that. But when you start looking at the larger segment of our population, 15% will have a mental illness, so they need a whole different approach. So whether it is psychology, psychiatry, both as important, each without the other is incomplete. So if you have somebody, let's say, having depressive features, and if you are only going to give counseling but don't give that person a medication which otherwise is indicated, assuming it's moderate to severe, then it's not fair, because the person will not get fined, and vice versa. So that aspect. And then there is middle population who may be having some concerns, especially Delhi Hassans, some other pressures, where some amount of guidance would be required, or some specialized approach which is more targeted at their individual problem, At a skill building level, whether it is using mindfulness, whether it is using social skills, whether it's using self corrections, behavioral change, some of those aspects need to be put in. So, the ideal program, I'm not very, I don't quite like EAP as a concept anymore, only because of the way we've trivialized it. We've lightened the meaning of it, to be honest. I mean, it happened organically, nobody's fault. But since it has become what it has become, probably organizations need to just come up with a new name. But in that transition, till we find a new name, we need to look at it from a spectrum: awareness and break the stigma, psychological first aid ability in the entire population, which also includes screening, the way of interaction, giving them a solution. Solution which is lifestyle, solution which is self-help, solution which is relationship, solution which is therapeutic intervention by a psychological expert, solution which is psychiatry, which is biological correction. And then moving forward, yes, there will be some people who would require more detailed work, whether it's inpatient. Some people would require rehab. Some people would require neuromodulation. You will need to understand that mental health is all of this. And the ideal program will be a program which has all of this. This bits and pieces, piecemeal approach needs to be just got rid with. You'd much rather not have anything than have something which is creating the perception that it is there, but it is not there. I'd much rather not have it there than the perception that it is there.
Dr. Parikh, I'll just stay on this for a second more and very briefly, because everybody has some level of anxiety. Everybody has some level of, um, that what my future would look like, or it could be many different variations of this, right? At what point do you say, okay, this needs maybe some kind of intervention, because a lot all the viewers that are here today, right, they will all say ki, there is some level of stuff that I think we all go through, right? So at what point do you actually say ki, hey, this is a sign of maybe depression or an acute anxiety that I'm facing? So if you can just unpack this briefly, that will be great.
Simple impairment of functionality. That's it. So if I am feeling anxious that I hope we finish on time because I have another thing starting at 4 and they are now after my life, then you should join. Like how our good friend Rohan was after my life since 2:30 to join. And in spite of that, I joined 2 minutes late. And that's life. But let's say if that is going to impact my tomorrow, my day after tomorrow, my sleep, and my other functionality, that's the issue. If you have anything which affects your functionality, then that's the only way to look at it. We don't need to be diagnostic about it. You don't need to know the difference between depression and anxiety, OCD and psychosis. You don't need to know what is bipolar disorder and what are mood swings. You don't need to know that. What you need to know is thought, emotion, behavior, social engagement, like physiological aspect, productivity, functionality. If that's getting impaired, now let's ask the expert, what do I need to do?
Great example, Dr. Parikh, and that makes it like super real for people to be able to understand that, right? In light of this, how do you think employers can design wellness programs that cater to the unique needs of diverse workforces while ensuring both scalability and effectiveness, right? So, bringing all of this together for corporate employees and the modern work, which is, I will not call it very stressful, but with given timelines and global nature of work, how do employers kind of make this really scalable and effective?
Right. So, in the current workplace today, we have various, subgroups of the population generations, right? We have the millennials, we have Gen Z, we have baby boomers. In fact, I am a millennial and I am sandwiched between my two young children and, my dependent parents and parents-in-laws, for example, right? So my requirements and my stress points are very, very different than a Gen Z who comes to work and maybe have just started out with their career. versus a baby boomer. So that understanding from the organization and the policymakers is very, very critical, because if I get a plain vanilla program, which is not customized for my requirement, I forget about using it. I will not even attend or pay attention to those programs. And rightly, like Dr. Samir Parikh mentioned just now, that I would rather not have something that's not going to be of any meaning and use for me, right? So curation of mental health program should be done after we have understood the various requirements of these subgroups, right? And how can I do that is we help clients conduct surveys. We have focus groups, discussions. We have health risk assessments on mental health to identify what are the common health risks that various demographics will require, so that tailored interventions can be given, right? So what do we do? That's the beginning of the process. Once that process is started, it doesn't end there. There's a even much more strenuous job to do, which is to match the requirement of those findings, right? And here we will talk about customization and hyper personalization. These two are the buzzwords that we are going to hear. We have already started hearing about it, but we are going to hear even more in the coming years. And I can tell you that in the next 5 years, we will no longer have uncustomized and not personalized programs. So hyper personalization is the buzzword of the moment right now, where we move from general to personalized care to hyper personalization, right? So we have increased demands, not just in mental health, but in an overall wellness space. We have a very high uptake for flex benefits. What is flex benefits? It's hyper personalization. It allows employees to choose the benefits basis their requirement. So I think mental health is just going to follow suit, and we are already in the right track. So that's the best way to scale it and also improve the effectiveness and engagement of these programs.
And in your view, without, of course, taking names of organizations, other than flex benefits, do you also see other tools that are kind of, you see that over a period of time, people are, or corporates are asking more than traditionally how they have, or any trends that you see out there for this?
So, that in terms of tools, we do see that because our workforce is getting younger and younger, there is a greater demand for gamified wellness programs. So it can be gamified mental wellness program, gamified general physical wellness program, but people are constantly on their phones and are more receptive when things are done virtually. We are also seeing that in the IT/ITES segment, people are still in a hybrid situation, and that may never change, realistically talking, right? However, the requirements of a manufacturing or a blue collar setup will be completely different. So I think HR and decision makers are now more and more getting sophisticated in terms of their understanding of their population and seeking out for tools that are relevant. What we also see is that AI chatbots, again, are coming into the mainstream. There are a subsegment, the younger population are very keen to interact with AI chatbots. And that's where, we see that HR or decision makers are seeking more information about it.
Perfect. Thanks a lot. In fact, we ran a study for about 1,000 plus people globally, and what we heard was that people are kind of more honest sometimes when when there is no human on the other side. So I think, yeah, with a certain set of population, we do see that trend, Mai, as well. Dr. Parikh, just changing gears a little bit here, what therapeutic strategies or approaches do you think are most effective in addressing workplace related mental health challenges, like anxiety and burnout? And I think you did mention early on that it's not just A versus B. Mental health, people think it's just about one, but it's really combination of multiple things, right? So what do you think are the best approaches to kind of deal with such a complex topic like this?
So before I come to that, I just had this thought, and since I was saying this, very important. So the whole idea about the AI needs to be understood. Why is it an important aspect or why is it a solution? Right? Now, I mentioned earlier that we have a shortage of experts. Now, let's say you have a few hundred people who want intervention. You have a couple of people who are available to them. Out of these few hundred, probably 75% people would not need these experts in the first place. So if you had a screening tool that can tell some people absolutely fine, don't do anything, or gives you some guidance, or takes you to self-help, or takes you to an expert, you are actually increasing the optimum utilization of experts. And in a developing country like ours, or most countries where the ratio of mental health professionals is not very high, there is no alternative. Now, coming back to your question, simply understand this. What is the root cause of psychiatry concerns? Psychiatric disorders, biopsychosocial, biological, your genetics, neuroplasticity, neuronal aspects, neurotransmitters, which is chemicals, psychological factors, your personality, your thinking, your experiences, social, which is your environment. This is what causes it. So, what is the treatment? Biological, correct through medications, neuromodulation, psychological, with the therapeutic approaches, cognitive behavioral therapy, and now the third wave, which is acceptance, commitment, dialectical component, and obviously the self aspect, which is lifestyle, and social, which is your relationships, your engagement in your work or your school, college. That's the treatment. And that's why, coming back to what I had earlier said, until you are able to give this entire spectrum, we should create the perception of a solution. So, if any program does not have psychiatry, for example, needs to say that we give only psychological intervention, but we are not a complete mental health solution. This whole idea of holistic mental health and end-to-end mental health needs to be both holistic and end-to-end, otherwise it's meaningless. And we waste these terms as though they are loosely used, and we take the meaning away. So you want to make a difference, you'll have to understand it completely. That's the only way to look at it. And I think organizations also will go through their evolution with mental health. It's a young science, relatively speaking. We've all tried to do whatever best we can. And that's why conversations like this are important. Where healthcare providers or healthcare community, here I'm representing them, let's say the innovators like you, or the digital platforms, solutions like you, and decision makers in organizations like mine, all of us need to come together, raise the bar of our conversation. We should pick what is best available today. It is not the best available 10 years down the lane. That's evolution. What we are using now is 10 years too dated. What we now need to use is what is best available today. It will become dated in 10 years' time. That science will grow into something better. I think that approach is something that needs to happen.
Dr. Parikh, in the same breath, as modern as we call ourselves, as forward-looking as we call ourselves, when you look at the holistic mental health, medication is a very important part of it. And while people are still kind of okay, and employees are still okay to think about having the right amount of food, social, cultural, all of those nuances into the regime of mental health, medication still seems to be something which has the highest stigma. I want you to spend 2 minutes to unpack this because it's a very important topic as well.
I'm on a thyroxine medicine for 25 years. I haven't asked my good friends in endocrine, is it addictive or not, or am I dependent or not? But the fact is, I will take it for the rest of my life. And that does not apply to about most patients and most medications that are prescribed by psychiatrists. It's as simple as
Thanks.
that.
Thanks so much for sharing that, Dr. Parikh.
Uh, uh, why the stigma? Look at the history. 80 odd years of medications. First 2 decades of medications were the ones which we are not using right now. At that time, they were game-changing, give life to people, but had so many side effect profile which people have remembered. But what was used then is not prescribed. The first medication, chlorpromazine, I haven't prescribed it now for 2 decades or more. So that's the transition. Stigma changes when you have the right conversations, where people open up without hesitation, where healthcare providers have integrated mental health programs, where physician community is also equally contributing to this, where parents, HR, managers, friends, media, social, role models, policymakers, everybody. Mental health is not about experts. It's about realizing every human being is a stakeholder and you can contribute as simple as being an advocate of mental health by not being a part of stigmatized, discriminating, nonsensical rubbish that circulates around us, which takes away lives of people and their families only because what will somebody else feel or say. So that change is something we can still bring in.
Thank you, Dr. Parikh, for always sharing your uncensored view about things. It's the way how it is, right? So always great to hear that. Also, for the audience, we're open for questions. In case anybody has questions, please type in the on the chat, and I'd be happy to take it. So, I'm going to come to you where Dr. Parikh actually left us in terms of that the whole community has to come together, right? If you look at it, right, in this whole ecosystem, there is, of course, employers, but there are insurance companies, there are insurance brokers, there are mental health professionals, and it will need effort from everybody to come forward. So my question to you, Amai, would be that what collaborative efforts can employers, insurance, health professionals, brokers will have to take to create a holistic approach to workplace mental wellness that can enhance productivity and also employee well-being over a period of time? Mai, I'll come to you first.
Right. So, see, we have to collaboratively try to solve some of the current challenges that we see in the space of mental health for corporates, right? One of them is low utilization. And I think in the beginning itself, we have tried to bring this up as part of a subtopic. But unfortunately, engagement, and it's not just mental health, it's just overall wellness that requires a lot of collaborative efforts and attention, right? And as we speak, some of the counseling programs, EAP programs, are still running at a single digit. Now, not that, and there are different dynamics at play, right? It's not necessarily bad to have a low usage. But at the same time, the question that we should ask ourselves, those who need it, do they use it? Does it reach to them? And when we ask that question, I think one of the things that we are not doing correct, and I see this, we help this, we turn around corporates who are having low engagement by working on their communication strategy, right? That's one very important component or a missing piece of the puzzle. If we don't communicate right, the employees will never find out that they have a benefit. I think privacy and confidentiality is another big question mark for the end user. As industry leaders, are we able to give them that sense of confidentiality? As service providers, are we absolutely there, in terms of giving that peace of mind to the end user that whatever they tell us or whatever input they give to the application, the AI chatbot, it's safe and sound, right? So these are the various things that I feel we need to work together. From the insurance side, in 2017, there was a Mental Health Act that was passed. Are companies using that? Are they inclusive about it, right? Can we have a wider coverage where people will be able to enjoy better mental health coverage, in the case of a hospitalization? Can we cover things like pharmacies and medicines for mental health, right, in the OPD program. So these are various, I think, very aspirational, but things, if we, create maybe working groups from various segments, insurers, employers, and providers, will really help the industry move forward. And that's something that I would love to do with you guys and various other providers, join hands and really solve this problem for the market.
Ritu, I'll just add on to this, and I think what you said is very, very important. And I'll specifically speak about the utilization. So my understanding of the utilization, which has been not where it should be, has about two, three reasons to this. One of the reasons being that I don't think a lot of mental health related programs were actually covering the entire bit. So what was happening was that if I needed to go to, let's say I had a depression and I needed a combination of a psychology, psychiatry, but the program would give me, let's say, self-help and some of the other tools, it would, if I use it, it won't be effective. Or I will see it as a non-complete, maybe not for serious problems also, or severer problems also. Serious is incorrect word, severer problem also. And for that, I will end up going still to my healthcare provider. Some aspect of mental health has a significant interface with healthcare providers. So now, until that component, which takes me there, is also given for here, the perception about the program starts getting more and more diluted with time. And also, most forms of self-help have a limited help ability. So if today you tell me that, do some exercise, and for a similar thing, you'll probably tell me that every time. Next time you may say a Zumba, or you may say some chant, or you may say some breathing exercise. Thereafter what? Because if you don't have the provision of the more complex interventions, the perception about it being a complete program goes down. Which is why, and you're right, it's not just mental health, it's for other things as well. Because even if you were to give, let's say, for an organization, they would be covered by, let's say, X hospital. But multiple factors may make them go to Y, Z also. And those things affect. But I feel if we are able to make programs better, we should be able to reach from this 1% or less utilization which is happening now. I think we can safely aim to reach at about 10% or 12%. The day we reach the 10% mark, that means the 10 to 15% of people actually needing help will become a part of this. And that will only happen when you are starting at intervention and starting at awareness, ending at intervention, and post intervention, which is, you're right, inpatient, rehab, and some of the other techniques also need to be a part of this. And I think that's what both organizations and healthcare providers need to do. And we should just avoid giving partial and scotch tape approach to something as important as mental health.
Very, very interesting, Dr. Parikh. So, and my thanks a lot. We have a suggestion actually from one of our viewers, and Dinesh, and he's saying that with recent incident of Atul, workplace should focus not only on workplace-related stressors, but also employees should be able to open up to personal stressors also. There should be access to counselors in every office with staff strength of, let's say, 50 or so. So thanks, Dinesh, for your suggestion. Maybe Dr. Parikh, I'll come to you, right? And when we started this webinar, you said that one of the issues is supply, and I would say Adayu is at the forefront of creating one of the most sophisticated mental health clinical ecosystem, if you will. How are you looking at building a solid ecosystem to cater to modern, workplace healthcare needs per se, right? So help me understand that a little bit.
Really, the honest answer is I don't think as individuals, you and I, or for that matter, whether it's United We Care, Adayu, Fortis Healthcare, we may be a smaller or a larger organization or team. I don't think by ourselves we'll be able to do much. Unless parallel there are more people, more organizations, and collectively we do that. See, what we are doing is we've been a healthcare provider. We realize that mental health interventions have been neglected largely by healthcare providers, barring a few services here and there. So we recognize that one of the biggest aspect missing is inpatient acute care. And if inpatient acute care is not given, then we are not helping at least a significant population who's struggling. Then you look at, and which is what we are doing. So it's a series of hospitals which are coming up as a DIU. Second aspect is if we don't create accessibility and reach, and mental health does not have the limitation of geography. Unlike other branches where physical touch and diagnostic tests and all are so important, mental health can actually do as well for a larger population requiring help through the digital platforms. So, for example, let's say our partnership with United We Care. We recognize that if there is a layer of AI, then we'll be able to help more people. So it's like having thousands of, let's say, people helping each clinician at the same moment in time, because the AI can help thousands and thousands of people at a given moment in time and deciding who needs what. So it actually gives space for these clinicians to be able to intervene. And it also gives help to people and simultaneously creating on the awareness. For example, we believe that immersive virtual reality is probably amongst the things that needs to be looked into. There is a lot of aspects, especially in cognitive aspects. So that's one more thing we are looking at. Precision pharmacogenomics. We are looking at an era where pharmacogenetics is taking an impact with our sister organization, Agilus. We are looking at using pharmacogenomics, which means why should I try one, then second, then third med? Why can't I know at go one which are more likely to use? Again, initial years, but that's the way forward. Looking at rehab, looking at how do we help people with cognitive aspects, how do we help people with executive function development. Then also adding on to the burden of caregivers, not for mental health only, for other chronic ailments, looking at health psychology, tertiary care programs. If you don't add psychological component, then a transplant, an onco, a surgery, a cardiac, your compliance, and more importantly, your prognosis that's impacted. All of this needs to come together. Mental health is not so much going to be about what some of us will do. It will be how all of us end up contributing some of ourselves and prioritize mental health. I mean, it's been the herd of elephant that nobody's quite bothered to do much about. And even today, if after so many years, if millions are suffering because they did not seek help, we need to be answerable to our conscience. Because it's a what kind of a society does not make its future safe, and you can't make your future safe if you don't make psychological safety an integral part of our own existence. Workplace, schools, colleges, societies, RWAs, families, homes, everything.
Thanks, Dr. Parikh. I think that was an amazing close to that. But Mai, I'll come to you. And if you could just share a few thoughts as a closing remarks as well. And I know that Prudent Insurance Brokers has been one of the most innovative, and so would love to have your, thoughts, parting thoughts as we end this webinar.
Thank you. Thanks for the generous comment. I think as a organization and which is also very, very passionate about mental health, we have had the privilege of working with partners like you. In fact, we've collaborated with Dr. Samir, Parikh as well in the past. What really makes us successful is, not being able to do this on our own, but having really wonderful partners like you, having clients who are equally inclined to solve this problem. I think it's a great ecosystem that we have all been able to create for the betterment of the mental health, for everyone in this industry. In fact, I see that 2025, there are a lot more opportunities for growth, a lot more opportunities for, improving what is already, doing great in 2024. Prudent ran a survey, last 2024, this year, And we found out that out of the 600 corporates that we interviewed, that we surveyed, 75% of them have given a positive rating of having a structured wellness program. And in that, mental wellness is part of our questionnaire as well. So, the employee is ready, the employers are ready, we are ready, and it's a beautiful place to be in because the market is really ready for this. And while companies will continue to face really difficult challenges, as a society, as an industry, we will continue to go through various challenges in this rapid environment for growth. I think it's really important for us to continue looking at the future and have a very far-sighted approach and saying that, okay, in the next 5 years, what are the problems that I can solve and how do we solve? I see technological integration as one of the very important component of this growth story, right? And I think you guys are doing a fabulous job of having that as a product offering, seamlessly connecting physical health and mental health. That is the future that I envision, and all of us are going to be party to that.
Thank you so much, Mai. Thank you so much, Dr. Parikh. It's always a pleasure interacting with you, and thanks to both of you for sharing, your deep thoughts. And it didn't even feel like, and we literally at time, it was such an amazing, engaging conversations, and I'm hoping our viewers actually gained something out of it as well. Thank you both. Thanks a lot.
Thank you so much for having us, Ritu.